Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast. What a race in Daytona. That was amazing, and I can't wait to start this year's playoffs. I think there's several teams that can compete and have a chance to win this whole thing. But we're going to start off by recapping Daytona, and if you watched it, my goodness, what a race. And we'll get into all that, but first, thank you all for continuing to listen, like, subscribe, share, rate, and review. I appreciate all of that. This week, we held a drawing for 2 free Kentucky football tickets. And on Facebook is where we held that drawing. And you all showed out and really got the podcast out there. Doubled my page likes. And, that's really appreciative for me. And I think that the drawing was well worth it, and I will definitely be looking forward to doing more in the future, whether that's NASCAR tickets, sports tickets. You all can kind of let me know what you would rather have, but the UK football drawing did well, and we had several entries, and so, it was a great idea and a great way to grow it. So if you all enjoyed that, please let me know. If you have any other ideas as to giveaways or how to grow the podcast, I'm appreciative of any information. So once again, thank you all. Thank you all for continuing to listen, and let's get into it. Before we get into the race recap, I just want to take a minute to say I'm honored and I really appreciate him taking the time to do this. My buddy Robbie Devore is from Asphalt Media, is going to hop on the pod with us today and help with a little playoff preview. We're going to each give our predictions and thoughts on some things. So, Asphalt Media, you all have heard me talk about it before on this podcast. It's a great way to interact with people and other people who like NASCAR or like watching other people, play video games. This one is iRacing. So it's literally just like you're watching a race broadcast on TV, and he streams on TikTok and Twitch. So give him a follow and help him out. He's done a great job with what he does, and I really appreciate him taking the time to hop on here with us. There really wasn't any significant things that happened in stage 1 other than coming to the stage 1 end. Martin Truex Jr. wins the first stage after it looked like Denny was going to. It looked like he positioned himself on the top line and was going to get a big push from the 36 of Riley Herbst. But Kevin Harvick decided to split the middle and go 3 wide, kind of leave Denny hanging out to dry. So Martin Truex Jr. won stage 1 and pretty much locked up the regular season point standings right there. It wasn't official till later in the race, but it seemed like that after Denny kind of lost a couple positions there and Martin Truex Jr. won the stage, that it was pretty much set that Martin Truex was going to win the regular season, and he ended up doing so. Something I saw this race that we hadn't really seen much in the next-gen car was 3 wide, and that was really awesome to see. I was just talking last week, I don't think it was on here, but it was in some racing forum that I'm on, that I really missed the Gen 6 cars on super speedways. It seemed like you could make a lot of moves pretty easily, and you could go from 20th to the lead in a matter of a couple laps, and that was really cool to see, but not quite there yet with this car. You can't really make that big of moves, but for them to be able to keep it 3 wide through most of the race was pretty awesome to see. And maybe that means that at Talladega in the playoffs you'll see some 3 wide. I'm not really sure. I know the Daytona surface everybody's talking about is aging, and the drivers are having to lift out of the gas some, even in this next gen car, which is pretty shocking to me. But, maybe it'll start racing like the old Daytona did, where, it's bumpy and several lifts of the gas throughout the race. And I guess we'll see. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it'll make the racing good as it did on Saturday night. It was honestly probably the best super speedway race that I've seen in this next-gen car. Of course, you had a couple big wrecks, but the racing itself was pretty much the best I've seen in the next-gen on a super speedway. So, on green flag pit stops, or I don't even think it was green flag pit stops. I think it was, actually, yes, it was green flag pit stops because that's how Denny became a lap down. So, Denny Hamlin and A.J. Allmendinger both crucial penalties on pit stops, which comes into effect later on. I thought Denny had got away from the pit road issues. This one, I hated to see it happen because I felt like he had a really good car. And, of course, you don't like seeing it happen to A.J. Allmendinger, too, because that pretty much takes out another driver that was eyeing the playoff with a win. So, both of those guys, crucial mistakes when Denny could afford to have it. I mean, he didn't have to have this race, but A.J. Allmendinger definitely could not afford to have that issue. Then the big one hits as the 20 of Christopher Bell gives the 54 Ty Gibbs a push. Wasn't a very big push. I know C-Bell definitely did not mean to do this. Pushes Gibbs. He's trying to push him to a Stage 2 win to get him those playoff points to try to get into the playoffs, and just oversteps it a little bit, pushes him in the corner, and 54 goes down into Blaney, and Ryan Blaney took a massive front impact hit here. Very, very reminiscent of the wreck in 2001, but the safer barrier did a great job. The safer barrier, it literally, when at the point of impact, looked like the wall bent, and because it didn't just look like it did bend, and the car really took a lot of the impact. I'm sure Blaney's still sore, and I'm not saying it didn't hurt. I mean, when you hit a wall going over 180, 190 miles per hour, it's going to hurt no matter what. But I think the car did a good job here. I really do. Once again, I'm not a driver. I was not in the car. I haven't seen the in-car, so I can't really tell how big of a hit he took. I know it looked massive from watching it on TV, and it was very scary. So we're glad to see Ryan Blaney walk away from that, and we're glad to see the safer barrier do its job. And that was great to see. But this wreck ended up collecting probably half the field. It was a big crash, knocked out several people. And after that, Brad Keselowski wins the second stage. And to talk about Brad Keselowski for a second, this is a pretty wild part. I don't know if you all have seen the video of him online during the red flag after the Ryan Preece incident, which we're about to talk about. But after the red flag, just while we're talking about Brad Keselowski, he starts turning his car in little circles during the red flag. And you're normally not supposed to move at all during a red flag or work on your car or anything. Apparently, his car was catching on fire, is what he thought. He smelt smoke. So he had to do something to prevent that and just started turning his car in many circles. It was wild to see. But my question is, and I'm going to give you my opinion, my question is, should that be legal? Is that legal? He did not get penalized for it. I've saw some takes that say you shouldn't penalize a guy for trying to not catch on fire. I agree with that, but at the same time, a rule's a rule. And it don't matter what driver it was. I don't have anything against Brad Keselowski. But, I think that if that happens, it happens. You get out of the car and your day's done. But he was smart. I mean, he didn't get a penalty out of it, ended up finishing second in the race. So, obviously, he knew what he was doing. But I think if you're NASCAR, you want to take a look at that and just go back to, really enforcing it. I feel like that if it was a mistake, I mean, it's something to do with the car. I feel like he shouldn't be able to move freely during the red flag. And that's just my opinion. You all can let me know if you agree or disagree. And after Brad K wins stage 2, we're getting really racy. And, it didn't really get racy until the last probably 10, 15 laps of the race. Everybody was on a single line. moving up top next to the wall. But as we get racy, I should say, Ryan Preece makes a move, obviously thinks he's clear, comes down in front of, I want to say, Chase Briscoe, his teammate. And, folks, this is one of the scariest crashes I've ever seen in my life. The height that the car got while it was flipping in the air was like something you would see out of Talladega Nights. I mean, it was almost unbelievable. Even, a video game hit. I mean, it was insane. The car tumbled at least 10 times, went super high in the air, and, it was very scary, very awesome to see Ryan Preece get out of that car. He stayed at a hospital overnight for evaluation, but was good after that, and that's just a great thing to see. There was some conversation about the roof flap coming off the car and exposing the cockpit. I want to actually amend the next-gen car in NASCAR because I'm telling you, I do not think 10 years ago that Ryan Preece walks away from this, or he would at least be injured very badly. And, I really think that the car did a good job. I know there was a lot of damage, and but he's good. He says he'll be back. There's no confirmation on whether he'll be back next week or not yet as of recording this podcast, but I would assume he would be. And that's just completely awesome to see. If you all haven't seen this wreck, if you didn't watch the race or haven't seen the highlights, go back and watch this, what I'm talking about, and just be so thankful that Ryan Preece is all right, and he will continue to race. After we get refired, there wasn't any other big wrecks or any wrecks at all, for that matter. And Brad Keselowski pushes Chris Buescher to his third win of the season for himself and RFK. And RFK finishing 1-2. What have they found in the last couple of weeks? These guys have been rather dominant, to be honest with you. Chris Buescher has won 3 of the last 5 races. And they've all come on different style racetracks. So these guys have found something. We'll see if it continues into the playoffs. I can't imagine them being this dominant on into the playoffs. But I guess we'll see. I could be wrong. But very impressive turnaround for RFK. And Ford in general. That helps Ford. I mean, Fords have seemed to be off this year until the last couple of weeks. And RFK has just absolutely took over. So, with Chris Buescher's win, that locked Bubba Wallace into the last spot into the playoffs. His first ever playoff appearance. And I'm proud for Bubba. All the obstacles he's had to overcome. I think he's got the talent. And I know several people who listen to this podcast disagree with me as I hear about it on a weekly basis when I even mention Bubba. But I think he's done a great job. I think all the pressure's lifted off of him now. And I got bad news for you all who don't like him. He's really good at Darlington, and he's really good at Kansas. So, we'll get into our playoff predictions, me and Robbie, here in a minute. But, I've got Bubba advancing. I'll just tell you all right now, I've got him advancing into the round of 12. And I think it's strictly because he's going to run. I think he runs well this week at Darlington. I think he runs really well at Kansas. May even be in contention for the win. So, for the Bubba Wallace haters out there, I'm sorry, not sorry. But he has made the playoffs. And both 2311 cars for the first time in their history have made it into the playoffs. Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace. So that's pretty awesome to see. Now, that's it for the race recap. Now I'm going to get into some news tidbits that have happened this week. I want to start off by saying that the Truck Series penalty to the 98 of Ty Majeski was huge. Apparently they found something in his tires. I've heard the term bleeders, which the tires were bleeding air during a run, during the race in general. And you all have noticed, if you've been watching any of the Truck Series races, that Ty Majeski has been dominating. And He's already locked himself into the next round of the truck playoffs. This penalty was huge, though. 75 points and a big fine and the loss of 5 playoff points, which will the points penalty where he's already advanced himself will not harm him. But, the 5 playoff points could come into effect, and I think they will. So, rough for the 98 team in Thor Sports. That's one of the biggest penalties I've ever seen, and it comes in the truck series for a very, I want to say a very rare thing. I've never seen that I can think of, just straight up tires and like that'd be pretty much like dealing with the motor. That's a huge advantage is what I'm trying to say for Tom Majeski and that 98 team. So they got caught, and we'll see if he can continue to run as well as he has been. It just stinks for him and that team. Your all's boy Chase Elliott does not make the playoffs, and the most popular driver in NASCAR does not make the playoffs. Honestly, think that's not a good sign for ratings. We saw earlier in the year that when Chase was out, the ratings kind of dipped. So I don't think that's the best for ratings. But, I didn't think he deserved to be in this year. He hasn't performed the way they should. He missed several races and, missed one race due to intentionally wrecking Denny at Charlotte. And, those are things that, when you miss 6-7 races, it's going to be hard to make the playoffs. Even if you come back and run top 5 consistently, if you don't get that win, it's going to be very hard, and Chase did not get a win. Would it surprise me if he goes out here and wins a race in the playoffs with him not being in? No, it would not. They are still in the Owners' Championship, that 9 car is. So I'm sure they're going to compete and compete hard. So we'll see how he ends up finishing in the Owners' Championship. I thought this one was interesting. Christopher Bell and Ty Gibbs swapping pit crews for the playoffs. And, Ty Gibbs not in the playoffs due to not having a win or not having to get enough points. But the 20 pit crew seems like they've struggled this year. And the 54 has been one of the best on pit road. So, this could be a heck of a swap. This could take C. Bell from a round 1 or round 2 competitor all the way to the Final Four, in my opinion. That's a great move by Joe Gibbs Racing, and we'll see what C. Bell can do. He clutched up and won in elimination races last year to make his way into the Final Four. So it would not shock me if he does it again. I wanted to touch quickly on the Xfinity race this week. You all know, if you follow racing at all, that the Xfinity races at Darlington are, honestly, in my opinion, the best Xfinity race of the year when they're there. Earlier this year, Kyle Larson and John Hunter Nemechek had a heck of a battle. Kyle Larson ended up prevailing on the very last turn as John Hunter kind of hit the back of Larson and ended up spinning down into the wall. But, man, it was a great battle. They fought for several laps. And you add some big names to the field during the second Darlington Xfinity race of the year. And this year, the big names are Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, and Kyle Busch. I look forward. I think those guys are going to be competitive. Sheldon Creed is always good at Darlington, it seems like. And I think that John Hunter, he almost had it won earlier this year. I think this is going to be a loaded field, and it's going to make for a great Xfinity race. So if y'all want to watch some awesome racing, Saturday at 3:30 is the Xfinity race. Big-time names, Cup guys that are in there. And then, of course, we've got the Southern 500 at 6 o'clock on Sunday. So I think it'll be a great race, and I think both of them will be great, to be honest. Kicking off the playoffs for the Cup Series, and I can't wait. On to team to beat and winner prediction. At Darlington, team to beat this week, I'm actually going to shock some people because I feel like common sense would say Hendrick. But I think Joe Gibbs is going to be the team to beat this week. Joe Gibbs Racing, JGR, Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell. I think those guys, and you can even lump in 2311 as well. I think the Toyotas will be strong here at Darlington. Martin Truex Jr. led a lot of laps last year or not even last year, but last spring here at Darlington, and ended up getting wrecked. So I think he'll be strong yet again. That team's still firing on all cylinders. And I think Denny will get some retribution for his bad run in the spring. I know he kind of messed the toe up on the first lap and ran about 12th to 15th all race long, which was very off for Denny at Darlington. But I think he'll bounce back. And I think Christopher Bell's the name to look out for, too. I just mentioned him having that new pit crew. I think that's a guy to watch out for. But I'm not picking any of those guys to win this race. I think as a team, they will be the strongest. But I'm picking a guy that has not ran well lately. And, actually both the guys that I was in consideration for picking to win this race have not ran well lately. But both of these guys were in the front at Darlington in the spring before they took each other out. And that's Kyle Larson and Ross Chastain. I think both of these guys will be blazing fast. But, I think Kyle Larson gets it done and advances his way into the round of 12. I think it's important for him to bounce back. He has not ran like he usually runs at all. Ever since the Pocono incident happened with Denny and everything, he has not ran up to the standards that 5 team wants to run. And I think that changes at Darlington. Kyle Larson is so good at Darlington. Always has been, even in his Ganassi days. And I think that he will get the win and advance his way into the round of 12. And that's my winner prediction. You all let me know what you think. I think that it'll be a great race. I think the playoffs, honestly, I don't see the playoffs having a bad race other than, Bristol was kind of a snooze fest last year. But hopefully that's better this year. And that's coming from someone who was at that Bristol race last year. Just not a lot of passing. It was kind of impossible to pass. You had the tire issues where guys would just, from the lead, pop a tire and spin or get up into the fence. So hopefully none of that happens this year. I love Bristol, and that's the only concerning race I have right now. But hopefully it's a lot better. I definitely think we start off on the right foot at Darlington this week. So now we are on to our question of the week. This week's question of the week is another great one. You all do a great job sending these in. And to get right to it, this one says, what is your favorite race of the playoffs? And selfishly, I'm going to go with the race that I attend every year in the playoffs, and that's Talladega. I think that just the nostalgia, the vibes around that weekend just in general is awesome, and this year is going to be even greater because for the first time in my life, I have VIP passes to go to Talladega and go into the garage and all that, so I think that'll be great. That'll be a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and, maybe not. I hope it isn't once in a lifetime. I hope this podcast gets big enough where I can do that on a regular basis. But, I think Talladega just in general, last year it was all right. Chase Elliott won. Really wasn't that crazy wreck-wise. I think that was right when, the whole safety concerns really blared, they really fired up around the Talladega race last year. So guys weren't pushing as hard. And, there were several wrecks in the April race this year. I was there at that one as well. There was a lot more wrecks. And I think it'll be a lot more crazy this year at Talladega. But that is my answer. You all let me know. Least favorite, I would have to go with the Roval just because I wish that the playoffs would be at the 1.5 miles at Charlotte, especially with this car. You all heard me on here ranting and raving after the Coke 600 that we needed to scrap the Roval and go to the 1.5 miles on both dates. And I still stand behind that. The Roval isn't terrible, but just the racing you can have on that 1.5 miles at Charlotte with this next-gen car is too great to pass up, especially in the playoffs. And the round of 8, I would like it to be in the round of 8. I think that would be really, really awesome. And, we'll see if they end up doing that. I'd say they keep the Roval around a little longer. But that's my answer. And once again, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for rating, reviewing, and subscribing. And you all are the best fan base, and especially my day one listeners that listen to this every single week. It means a lot to me. So let's go get these playoffs underway and see what unfolds, and we'll be here to recap it next week. And until then, thank you all. This has been JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast. Now we have a guest for the first time ever on JD's NASCAR and Sports Podcast, and that is my friend and good buddy Robbie Devore, and with Asphalt Media. And Robbie, if you just want to give us a synopsis, or what is Asphalt Media?
JD, first of all, thank you very much for having me out here, buddy. I really appreciate the invite. Asphalt Media is the newest up-and-coming iRacing series we do. It's a one-stop shop for everything NASCAR, whether we're talking about Cup Series, Xfinity, or the Truck Series, iRacing, diecast, what have you. We're the cool kids club here at Asphalt Media, so we're growing rapidly, and we run a lot of iRacing races, in which you, Mr. JD, have taken part in, and actually you've won a few races with us, so it's cool to see. And again, thanks for bringing me out, buddy.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate it, and I love racing with you all weekly. So if you all want to support Asphalt Media, follow them on TikTok. They stream 5 days a week for right now. We'll see if that changes in the future, but go watch his live streams. And now we're going to get into the race at Daytona. Just a couple things before we get into our playoff preview. I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts about the Ryan Blaney incident when he went head-on into the wall?
Well, let's see here. It definitely gave me a little bit of post-traumatic stress there, because I don't know if you remember this, if you were around in 2001 or not, but Mr. Intimidator, he definitely took a very similar impact there. I was really worried about it. For one, first off, you could see the safer barrier. It completely flexed there. So it did its job, but I think it made visually, to everybody watching at home, it made it look so much worse than what it might have been. If there was no safer barrier there, I don't think that Ryan Blaney would still be with us today. But as far as the wreck is concerned, that is the worst place at Daytona that you want to hit at a 90-degree angle. I mean, he had no idea it was coming. It was such a hard impact. And I mean, even the aesthetics of the wreck itself reminded me of what happened to the 3-car in 2001.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how. Yes, I mean, and the picture, the screenshot of the wall literally caving in. I mean, I'm glad it did its job. But I had almost the same thoughts earlier in the podcast. Like, it looked so similar to what happened. So I took a minute to like brag on, and the front end caved in very well, which it seemed like the car took most of the impact on the wall. Maybe not as much on Blaney, but yes, it definitely was scary. And even scarier one, after that, in my opinion, I might be in the minority here, but Ryan Preece, that looked like something out of iRacing. I mean, it literally picked the car up, threw it, and he barrel rolled at least 10 times. What were your thoughts on that one?
Well, first off, man, I think that Blaney accident was worse than what Ryan Preece's was, just because of the impact itself. That was such a blunt force impact to the outside retaining wall at the worst possible place that you could do it. Just got completely hooked. But that Ryan Preece accident, I think that one, I cannot imagine. Just try to put yourself inside the helmet of Ryan Preece during that accident. He just kept climbing the air. Like, I've never seen as many barrel rolls done at super speedways. There's obviously a high chance for flipping, getting airborne, but I have never seen one climb the invisible mountain that is the air. And I'm glad he walked away. You could tell he was a little bit wonky there when he got out of his race car and then laid on that stretcher. But I've listened to a few podcasts and I've read some articles about it, and it seems like the reason that happened the grass. Have you heard anything about
Yeah,
it? Apparently,
drivers
there's
are
a
wanting
change in the grass, like the amount of pressure that's underneath the car to give it liftoff.
Yes, I've heard that drivers are really adamant that they need to remove grass from all tracks, and especially super speedways, which actually shocks me. I don't guess I ever realized that grass had that much to do with it. But yeah, and you're probably right. The Blaney one was probably worse, but as a casual viewer, if you were watching that NASCAR for the first time, I would think that you would think the Priest one was worse, just because
Right.
the height it got and stuff. But I mean, both of them were very bad, and so glad that both of them walked away unscathed. So that's the most important part. But
Right.
I appreciate your insight on that. Now we're going to go round by round, and I'm basically just going to ask you, who are the 4 drivers in each round do you think will be eliminated? And, in my opinion, the most dominant car of the year has been William Byron and Martin Truex Jr. Those 2 guys seem like they are the best, but round by round things can change quickly. So we're going to give our predictions. They could be completely right or completely wrong. I've had both over the past. So my first 4 out, and I'm going to go Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Kevin Harvick, and the shocker of the first round exit is last year's defending champion Joey Logano. I just think that they have not shown the speed or the ability this season to contend. I know he won at Darlington last year, but earlier in the spring, he ran like crap, to be honest with you. Finished, I think, 16th, and was never really competitive. So what are your thoughts on the round of 16?
So I got to disagree with you there on Joey Logano, just because he's a multi-time champion, and I think that once you get in playoff mode, he's completely different behind the helmet, in between the ears. So I think he's going to move on. I disagree with that one. There are a couple that you mentioned that I do disagree with, or do agree with. So the round of 16, I think the first 4 that are going to get eliminated are, it hurts me to say it, Michael McDowell. He's obviously the Cinderella story that I want to see at least getting into the round of 12, but I'm just looking at the tracks. It doesn't look like front row has as much speed as everybody else out there, so he's limited as far as equipment is concerned. Ricky Stenhouse, another one of those guys that came in here. He was Daytona champ. That one's a wild card. He's got a skill, but unfortunately for the 47 in that team, there isn't any tracks that really synergize with his driving style there in the first round. If I had to pick another one that's going to be out the first round, this one might be a little controversial, but I think Ross Chastain is going to get eliminated. It's just ever since Darlington, when he was wrecking Larson and he was pushing him into turns almost halfway down the backstretch, it seemed like after that moment, and Mr. Hendrick came on the radio and pointed out that, man, Ross has been wrecking them Chevys like crazy. It's just there's something that's changed in his psyche. There's something that's just a little bit different. He's lost his edge, and I don't think that he's going to be I just feel like the first round is going to eat up that number 1 Trackhouse machine.
See, I was down to Logano or Chastain, so we almost had the same 4 there. So, wait, you gave 4, right?
I gave 3, and then my last one that I think is going to get eliminated is the 45 of Tyler.
Ooh, that's a hot take. I figured, and the reason that I had both 2311 cars advancing into the round of 12, I don't think it's necessarily performance based, but I look at Kansas next week and I see a track that they swept last year. So, and I mean, I feel like that Bubba ran top 5 there this year too, so I had him, but. All right, those are interesting. We already disagree, so I think this is going to be a good talking point, and this is what I wanted. So, the round of 12, I'm going to follow suit with you. I've got Ross Chastain getting eliminated, Brad Keselowski, and then Tyler Reddick and Bubba Wallace. So I've got 2311 advancing to that round of 12, but then both cars getting knocked out. I think Brad K, don't get me wrong, RFK, especially the last 5 weeks, has been pretty insane. I mean, they've went on a run that has been great, but Chris Buescher, while they both kind of run in the same position on the track, I feel like Buescher's just been better all year long, to be honest with you. So I think he moves on to the round of 8, but I think Brad K goes home in the round of 12.
Okay. All right, I do agree with you there. I think Keselowski's one of those guys. Obviously, he's a champion. He knows how to win. The only thing that's holding me back, I think that one of those RFK Fords is going to get eliminated in the round of 12. And if I had to pick one, I know he's been hot. He's won 3 of the last 5, but I think Buescher might be more likely to get eliminated. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But the round of 12, let's see. We got... I think Brad Keselowski's going to move on. Chris Buescher gets eliminated. I think Christopher Bell also gets eliminated. Let's see. I think Kyle Busch gets eliminated. And then I got to go with Ryan Blaney. So the reason that so Bubba Wallace, I think, is going to move on to the round of 12. And then even further, just because if you look at the round of 16, I know we're taking a step back here for a second. You got Kansas. You mentioned it. 2311 and Toyotas in particular are very strong there. Bubba Wallace is the defending champion of this race at Kansas. I think he's going to move on there. And if you go to round of 12, you got Talladega, man. I don't know if you've noticed, but super speedways are Bubba Wallace's bread and butter. And I think that even the Bubba Wallace haters can admit that he is in the top 10 of talent on super speedways. His biggest problem is that he just doesn't finish the race. Now, I think that could work in his favor simply because every single time we go to Talladega, there is an overcast of rain-filled clouds, and rain-shortened races are his forte there. He's always leading. It seems like he's always up in the front up until about the last 5 to 10% of the race gets taken out, or he screws it up on his own, makes a wrong move, takes it high when he's supposed to take it low, doesn't see the energy, gets split in the middle. But I think if we get a rain-shortened race, man, Bubba Wallace could be one of those guys that's a sleeper to get onto the round of 8. So
I like that. I like that prediction, man. I love Bubba Wallace, so I'm all for it. And, I've been at Talladega the last several years, and you are correct. Especially the spring of this year, man. I thought that was Bubba's race to win. And, it comes down to the last lap. Kind of makes a bad block on Blaney there and ends up screwing him up. But I don't hate the pick. I think Bubba is a lot better than people give him credit for. I know he has some issues, maybe like pit crew. His pit crew has really struggled at some points, but I feel like they always bounce back. And I feel like Bubba is definitely a guy to watch. And now the round of 8. My final 8 are William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Chris Buescher, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, and Christopher Bell. And the only reason I have Christopher Bell in the round of 8 is because of the switch of pit crews. I don't know if you saw it. The 54 and the 20 are switching pit crews for the playoffs. And the 54 team has been like top tier all year long. And I think that will help Christopher Bell. A lot of his struggles this year have been pit road issues. So that's a little sneaky pick to the round of 8. But advancing to the final 4, I've got the top 3 all year long. William Byron, Martin Truex, and Denny Hamlin. And the 4th, I think, comes as a surprise because I don't think he's ran the best this year, but I think that it's playoff time. He's due for a good run. He could have won at Phoenix last year, but didn't want to pass his teammate. I'm going with Ryan Blaney as my 4th entrant into the Final 4.
Man, it seems like everybody makes that pick there. It seems like everybody is pulling for Ryan Blaney. They want to see him finally break out and make the championship 4. I don't know, man. He's got a lot of competition this year. Obviously, he could win and in the round of 8 to set him in the championship 4. But as far as making it in the championship 4, if he doesn't win, I don't think there's any chance at that. So I disagree there. I'm kind of lost here on the round of 8. But if I had to pick the championship 4, I would switch out a couple for you. So Martin Truex Jr., the regular season champ in the 19, I think is going to get there. Denny Hamlin are one of those guys that's going to make it this year. One thing back. Let's take a step back, though.
All right.
The 20 of Christopher Bell. I don't know if you remember this last year, but he switched entire pit crews with the 23 as well around the same time, and it helped him out. He got into the championship 4, and he was consistent on pit lane. So it's interesting to see Joe Gibbs is willing to move pieces around to try to give his team the best chance to win. And I think if I'm driving a Toyota for JGR, that's got to be one of the biggest selling points. He's willing to put the people in your corner to give you the best chance to win. It doesn't matter if he has to take resources from someone else. So
including his own grandson. Including his own
grandson, yeah, absolutely. So Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, and then I got to throw in Kyle Larson. I don't know why. It just seems like it's hip to pick Kyle Larson, so I'm going to be picking Kyle Larson. And then, let's see, probably Logano again. As much as I hate it, it's probably going to be Logano in there. He always has a way of disappointing me and by doing better than my expectations. So I don't think William Byron's ready for it. Obviously, he's in the breakout season. He's in the best season of his career. It's just, I don't know. Something's holding me back about that 24. He seems a little bit too timid for my taste.
Yeah.
But to win a championship, you got to be on fire. You got to be, whether it's on the racetrack or off the racetrack, you got to have a certain mentality that I just don't think William Byron and that 24 team has developed yet. That's the key word, yet. I think he's a couple years away from being up there running for the championship, but unfortunately not this year.
And I think a guy that has proved that he's ready and that has been, I don't know if quietly dominant is a word, but my pick to win the championship is Martin Truex Jr. Regular season points winner. I know that kind of sounds cliche that I would pick him, but it feels like this is his year. You know, didn't make the playoffs last year, was fourth in the point standings, but didn't get that win that he needed to get in last year. And, you know, I think he does it. I think he gets his second career championship.
Yep, I'm right there with you. He's my pick as well. He's just been too good. Like every time, the last time he won in 2000, I believe it was 16 that he won the championship. Yeah. He had like 7 or 8 wins that year or something, and he's been on a tear. It started off with the Clash. He did fantastic there, and he's got that win at Dover, and then he's winning on road courses. He's winning on every single type of track. I also got to pick Martin Truex Jr., but let me ask you a question. Out of everybody that's in the top 16 right now, I know you've already had your picks at who's going to eliminate going to get eliminated in the first round. But who is your dark horse? Who is someone that you think could sneak up there, whether you picked him or not? Who do you think is something that could sneak up there and go further and deeper in the playoffs than what we are expecting of him?
Oh, that's a good question. And you know, do you classify Kyle Busch as a dark horse? I mean, he's with RCR now. I would say probably not. I guess give me, I want to say Bubba, but you already took Bubba, so I can't say him. I think Ross could be, and here's why.
Really?
I know he's been terrible lately, but I want to know, like, what happened. Did the wreck with Larson, him taking Larson out, did that really change his mind mentally? And if so, will his mentality be back to where it was before entering the playoffs? You know, his cars just didn't get significantly slower after he took Kyle Larson out for no reason. Like, there's got to be something going on. And if he's mentally back in the Ross Chastain mindset, I don't think there's any reason why he couldn't make it to the Final Four again like he did last year.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, man, the personality is definitely there on Ross Chastain. The fact I was able to be lucky enough to be witness to that Hail Melon last year at Martinsville, and man, that just says a lot about. I know we're taking a year down memory lane here, but just think about all the decision making that has to go into that. He went on the radio on the exit turn 2 at Martinsville on the last lap. Do I need these positions? His radio said, yes, you got to have them. And in a matter of 3 seconds, he made the decision. Ripped it into 5th and let her rip, Tater Chip. It was incredible. So that tells me that he's willing to do whatever it takes. And I think that is another dark horse there. Ross Chastain could. I just feel like he's on a sleeper part of his schedule. I would love to see Kevin Harvick go out in his swan-song season and get up there in the championship four. Whether he wins the championship or not still remains to be seen. I don't think that's as likely. But I think that 4 could potentially make another run here at a championship. That's my dark horse as well.
That's a good pick. And speaking of the Hail Melon, that was one of the worst days of my life. I mean, it was an awesome move, but, dude, Denny was locked in to the championship for all race long. He went out and won both stages, and it was just kind of like a gut punch to get the championship 4 ripped away from him like that. But it was an awesome move and really good for NASCAR, honestly. So, I mean, it'll live in infamy forever. I mean, heck, they even banned it now. So, I mean, he obviously did something right. But
I don't. Yeah, that hurts my stomach to hear that they banned that.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't do that every single week. That would just be a strategy now. If you're running second, why wouldn't you? And you're in arm's reach. Why wouldn't you do it? But still, it's just. Man, that was awesome. I'm so glad I got to see that.
Yeah.
Denny Hamlin last year at Martinsville, I put $300 on him to win that race. So it was also a gut punch for me as well. So he was doing so good.
Well, yeah, he was, and I hope, man, what's it going to take for him to get a championship? I mean, it's like every year something screwy happens, but we'll see if it happens this year. I appreciate you hopping on here, and is there anything else you want to add?
No, man. Just like you said earlier, we stream 5 days a week, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you guys want to give us a follow, the Asphalt Media across all platforms, we would love to have you guys a part of the community. Join the Discord, discord.gg/Asphalt Media. And I think that is it, man. Thank you for having me on here. I appreciate it.
All right, Robbie, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Take care, buddy.
You too.